On this Sunday night, the countdown is on for women in the United States as demand increases at abortion clinics before bans begin.
Am I going to be prosecuted?
Though abortion is legal here, the barriers, experts say, could get worse.
Despite the fact we're supposed to have a healthcare system that is equal and equitable for all, it's not.
And what's coming next from the conservative Supreme Court? Attacks intensify in Ukraine, what Russia claims while hitting civilian targets. A highly respected conservative voice speaks out against her own.
I'm very worried for our party.
Our exclusive interview with retired conservative Senate leader Marjorie Le Breton as the leadership race gears up. Canada Day skiing? The hill where it's cold enough to open up runs this long weekend.
Global National with Farah Nasser.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. We are now in the final days of abortion being legal in some U.S. states. Clinics are seeing a rush of patients who had autonomy over their body and reproductive rights under law just days ago. That comes as calls grow louder and stronger for Joe Biden to take action and protect abortion rights nationwide, while rallies continue across the country today to protest Friday's monumental strike down of Roe v. Wade. Many are calling on the U.S. president to use federal land as a safe haven in states with a ban or to severely restrict the practice altogether. Tennessee is one place that has one of the most restrictive bans, and it's expected to come into effect in the coming days. And that's where we find our own Jackson Proskow tonight. And Jackson, there, fear over abortion access is quickly turning into reality.
That's right, Farah. They know the ban is coming. The question for women and healthcare providers is, what does life look like once that ban is in effect? There are a lot of troubling questions and a lot of very real concerns.
One of the most famous destinations in the U.S. may soon be defined by what it refuses to allow, as Tennessee enacts a deeply restrictive abortion ban, one with no exceptions for rape or incest.
That's heartbreaking for me, and it's going to be really hard for me to tell that news to my patients when they ask me, where can I go to get an abortion?
Dr. Katrina Green is an emergency physician in Nashville. Once the state's trigger ban comes into effect in July, she will not only have to worry about her patients, she must also worry about herself.
Am I going over the law? Am I going to be prosecuted?
Soon, doctors will only be able to perform an abortion if the life of the mother is deemed at risk, a term poorly defined.
Women are going to die as a result of this. There will be doctors who hesitate to act because they're worried about breaking the law and going to jail, and women will suffer and they will die.
The uncertainty extends to the local Planned Parenthood clinic, where staff will continue providing abortions until they no longer can. After that, their only option will be to help women leave the state.
We are going to do everything we can to make sure that finances and logistics does not stand in the way of any person getting the abortion care they need. And we are also going to continue to fight like hell to get this right back in Tennessee.
The odds of that seem slim. Tennessee has already criminalized providing abortion-inducing drugs by mail. Violators face up to 20 years in prison. The hopelessness felt by many was heard during Sunday Mass at St. Anne's Episcopal Church.
A lot of people sure aren't feeling very free. Free to make choices about our bodies. Free to live as the people we're called to be.
This is kind of just the beginning.
In this deeply conservative state, Reverend Kira Austin Young preaches that faith and choice can coexist.
Really tries to balance what we believe as Christians, that life is holy and beautiful and deserves to be nurtured, with the knowledge that life doesn't always work out the way we think it might or should.
But it's now too late to change the course of reproductive freedom in Tennessee, with just weeks left until the unprecedented rollback of women's rights.
And polls show that the state's restrictive abortion ban is vastly out of touch with what the majority of people in this state actually want. In a survey from just last month, 80% of people in this state said there should be some legal access to abortion in at least some instances. And that's up from 40% less than a decade ago, which shows you how fast the public tide of opinion has swung in favor of some abortion access. Farah?
Jackson Proskow in Nashville. Thank you, Jackson. In its strike down of Roe v. Wade, at least one conservative Supreme Court justice signaled that more rights could be on the line, increasing worries among millions of Americans about what's to come. Jennifer Johnson has more on the fight to ensure the controversial decision isn't the beginning of other historic human rights rulings being reconsidered by the conservative court.
I'm scared as a woman.
As protests continue outside the U.S. Supreme Court, there are concerns the conservative majority will now hear challenges to other court cases, including those protecting the right to contraceptives and same-sex marriages.
Next, they're going to come for birth control, and they're just going to keep going for everyone's rights.
Our community is scared.
In the opinion striking down Roe v. Wade, Justice Clarence Thomas said the court's rulings on both contraceptives and same-sex marriage should be re-examined. Two other conservative justices disagreed.
There was no one that joined in that opinion. So this is not about contraceptions. This is not about same-sex marriage.
Governor Hutchinson says contraceptives will still be sold in Arkansas, but already abortions are illegal there. Many legal experts are concerned, though, about the court overturning the ruling that legalized same-sex marriage.
We now know that a majority of the Supreme Court wouldn't have recognized them in the first place. As to whether they would now reject them, the key point is that they've only been around, recognized by the Supreme Court for 5, 10, 15 years.
A few members of Congress want to impeach the justices who they say misled lawmakers on their abortion views, but that has no chance of passing in the divided Senate. Others are investigating what can be done at a federal level to protect a woman's right to abortion.
Women are not second-class citizens, and the government is not the one that will decide about the continuation of a pregnancy.
As 26 states move ahead with plans to make abortions illegal or severely restrict them, dozens of large corporations are publicly pledging to cover employee travel expenses for those who have to go to other states to get the procedure. The Washington, D.C. area homes of several of the conservative Supreme Court justices remain heavily guarded with protesters outside. A new poll shows 67% of American women disapprove of the court's ruling.
The rest of the world is laughing at us and standing, with their mouths open. How can America do this?
The next test for the country's political future will come in the November elections, as some Americans see their rights being taken away, while others celebrate a battle they've been waging since the woman known as Jane Roe won her case nearly 50 years ago. Jennifer Johnson, Global News, Washington.
As rallies continued across the United States, several Canadian cities held their own events in support of abortion rights this weekend. And while abortion is legal in Canada, advocates say that abortion access is still a big problem in many parts of this country. As Heather Yurex-West explains, they fear those barriers could soon get worse.
Maggie Butler was on vacation in Montreal when her right to health care significantly changed.
In my home state of Wisconsin, abortion is now illegal as of Friday, and I'm considering moving to either a different state, maybe to Canada, who knows.
That a right to a safe abortion held by women in the U.S. for decades could be suddenly taken away inspired rallies in several Canadian cities over the weekend. In Montreal, Halifax, and Toronto.
What the right must understand in Canada is that we will not stand for this here. We will defend a woman's right to choose. We will defend people's rights to love who they choose. We will defend people to choose their gender identity.
Abortions remain legally available in this country and funded by Canada's healthcare system. But accessing the service can be difficult for those living in isolated or rural communities.
Despite the fact we're supposed to have, a healthcare system that is equal and equitable for all, it's not.
The only abortion clinics in Alberta, for example, are located in the province's two major cities.
If you're trying to navigate taking a bus down to Edmonton or Calgary, Greyhound services don't even exist anymore. So if you're a low income, if you have a huge family already, if you're working 2 to 3 jobs just to pay your paycheck, you don't have that ability to travel somewhere for 2 to 3 days.
I need you to talk about abortion.
It's why advocates say this moment in time needs to serve as a wake-up call to anyone concerned about reproductive rights.
Even though it's happening south of the border, those things have a way to creep up on us.
And why protesters gathered on the streets of many Canadian cities this weekend say they won't back down. Heather Yurex-West, Global News, Calgary.
To the war in Ukraine now. Russian forces have launched more waves of missile attacks that have killed and injured innocent civilians. These include a new round of bombardments on Kyiv, which comes just days after the European Union agreed to formally accept Ukraine's candidacy into the EU. Sean O'Shea is in Ukraine and has more on the deadly day in its capital.
This happened at a car wash. Russian rockets hit a structure that included a repair facility. 3 people were killed. 4 others were treated in hospital. Here in eastern Ukraine, there's been a definite uptick in the number of missile and rocket attacks over the last few days. And in Kyiv this morning, the capital was targeted for the first time since early June. It's now a daily experience somewhere in Ukraine as civilians remain in the Russian firing line. There were at least 4 large explosions in the center of the city. In this apartment building, rescuers worked to save a 7-year-old girl. She was sleeping peacefully until a cruise missile hit her home, said the country's foreign minister. It's the second time this apartment has been attacked. Rescuers were busy saving residents at another building. And at a different location, someone stuck under broken concrete screamed for help. The city's mayor was at the scene.
We know the couple of people inside.
At yet another location in Kyiv, a large blast left a crater in a kindergarten playground, all as Russia continues to deny it's targeting civilians, claiming its army is hitting 3 Ukrainian military training locations on Sunday. This just days after Ukrainian forces retreated from Severodonetsk. The eastern city, once home to 100,000 people, is now entirely under Russian control. Thank you to the soldiers who evacuated us from there, says this woman named Elena. She and others are now out and on their way to a safer place as Russia celebrates its biggest victory in this war since the capture of Mariupol last month. Sean O'Shea, Global News, Kharkiv, Ukraine.
2 Canadian naval ships are deploying for the first time to the Baltic Sea and the North Atlantic to help counter Russia's aggression. The crews of HMCS Kingston and HMCS Summerside bid farewell to loved ones departing Halifax today to take part in Operation Reassurance, the NATO mission led by Canada's military in Europe. The pair of ships will help with demining operations on their 4-month deployment. In South Africa, police are investigating the mysterious deaths of at least 22 young people, some children, found inside a popular nightclub. Forensic teams are scouring the club in the coastal town of East London, looking for any signs of what may have caused the tragedy. The victims are mostly in their late teens, early 20s, but police say some of them are as young as 13 years old. Autopsies will be done to determine the cause of death, but police have ruled out a stampede. Coming up, unity for Ukraine tops the agenda at the G7, but what critics say should be just as urgent. Plus, forget the cabin, cottage, and campfire where you can hit the slopes for Canada Day weekend. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in southern Germany for his latest summit with G7 and European leaders. And with Russia's war on Ukraine still raging, the conflict remained a top priority for day 1 of the 3-day summit. Our chief political correspondent, David Aiken, is traveling with the PM and has more on how the leaders are determined to show unity against Russian aggression.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau touched down in Munich on a sunny Sunday morning, was greeted by a traditional Bavarian hunting party and band, then took off in a helicopter for a castle in Elmau in the Bavarian Alps, a summit with G7 and other world leaders where the dominant topic of discussion will be Russia's invasion of Ukraine and all the global turmoil that has caused.
Lots of hard work to do on climate change, on Ukraine, and on growing the economy and helping our citizens with them.
The key objective for Trudeau and all leaders here, maintaining the unity and resolve of the G7 in support of Ukraine.
We have to stay together, because Putin has been counting on from the beginning. And somehow NATO would, and the G7 would splinter, but we haven't, and we're not going to.
Good message is that we all made it to stay united.
But protesters insist climate change must also be at the top of the G7 agenda. And leaders here will indeed spend time talking about that.
Tackling climate change is both a challenge and a massive opportunity. On climate, the EU is the leader. and we are fully committed to the Paris Agreement.
Still, with those fresh rocket attacks on Kyiv Sunday, Ukraine remains the most urgent topic on the table here right now. And on Monday, the Ukrainian president himself will join in. Volodymyr Zelensky will dial in by video conference to talk to Justin Trudeau and other G7 leaders about what more the G7 can do to support Ukraine in its war against Russia. Farah.
David Aiken in Germany. Thank you, David. Ahead, a retired Conservative senator speaks out, critical of her own party in this Global News exclusive, the one event that really changed things for her.
You're watching Global National.
A high-profile veteran of the Conservative Party is speaking out over its future. In an exclusive interview on the West Block, former Conservative Senate leader Marjorie Le Breton expressed worries for the party she's worked with for decades over the divisive direction it now seems to be heading. As Abigail Beeman reports, Le Breton is pushing back against the dangerous rhetoric growing popular among its members, including those running for leadership.
I'm very worried for our party.
Marjorie Le Breton, retired Conservative Senate leader, decades of experience with the party and widely respected. In an exclusive interview on the West Block, she says she feels she no longer has a home in the Conservative Party.
I really fear that the great accommodation that was reached between Stephen Harper and Peter MacKay in the fall of 2003 is fracturing beyond repair.
Causing her the most concern, members who embrace convoy protests.
The whole idea of wrecking a cornerstone of conservatism in law and order was sort of really upsets me, and I'm very, very worried.
Last week, key organizers were welcomed by some Conservative MPs on Parliament Hill, including leadership hopeful Leslyn Lewis. There are further rallies planned for Canada Day and the summer.
The main cornerstones of conservatism is law and order. And law and order is law and order. And illegal blockades are illegal blockades, whether they're at a border crossing, a pipeline, a railway line, they're illegal.
Le Breton is also disappointed in the current leadership race, wanting candidates to focus more on issues, less on personal attacks.
It's never great when, you have somebody like Senator Le Breton expressing concerns, but at the same time, I'm less worried about permanent divisions in the party. I think whoever wins the leadership will try to bring people together to heal those divisions.
Le Breton resigned from leadership candidate Pierre Poilievre's riding board of directors over his support of the convoy. Global News reached out to his campaign for comment but did not get a response. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
Next up, the scenes we haven't seen in 2 years in Canada. In-person pride at one of the biggest parades in the world. This is the first weekend of summer, and it certainly feels like it across much of British Columbia. The majority of the province is under a special weather statement for heat, with temperatures reaching the low to mid-30s today in Metro Vancouver. The warmer than normal weather is expected to stick around until at least tomorrow. And a very different scene in neighboring Alberta as, get this, Banff's Sunshine Village Ski Resort prepares to reopen for the Canada Day long weekend. The resort is reporting 10 centimeters of fresh snow in the past week, adding to the more than 900 centimeters of snow the mountain received this season. Operators say skiers and snowboarders will be welcomed back on Tuesday with the hopes of staying open until at least July 3rd. Now, there are countless reasons to celebrate LGBTQ2S+ communities this Pride Month, of course, but it wouldn't be complete without going to the Pride Parade. Well, Toronto hit quite a milestone with its own celebration. Not only is it now 50 years since the first Pride Parade in Toronto, this was the first in-person one since 2019. Megan King has more on the festivities.
Beads were flying and people were dancing along the downtown parade route on Sunday as Toronto celebrated its 41st Pride Parade.
I'm really excited about this because we deserve. Pride is celebration, pride is passion, is everything.
It's just a fun event. I like coming every year. It makes me feel better and happy.
And And for mothers such as Emily Maderick, Pride events, she says, provide a safe space for her children.
My children identify as girl and non-binary, so it's really important for them to get out and see this representation and just experience all the love and the happiness. Plus, we're very into rainbows.
This is very important. It's very important, and hopefully we'll send the message to families to, embrace your own.
The Toronto parade, now back after a 2-year pandemic hiatus, brought crowds from across the province and beyond.
It's rather amazing because most of us are from a very small town that's not mostly rude people. And it's just so great to see all the pride and rainbows, and
I'm loving it.
Love.
I have a lot of students who they struggle with sexuality and just coming out, and it's good to be outside, embrace this, and oh my gosh, allyship, happy Pride.
With over 200 contingents and over 200,000 participants, even these all the way from Montreal, everyone's out here celebrating Pride and love. Megan King, Global News, Toronto.
Celebrating pride and love. That's what it's all about. Happy Pride to those of you who are celebrating it this weekend. And that's Global National for this Sunday night. I'm Farah Nasser, and on behalf of our crew, I want to thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. Tonight's Your Canada is a hungry squirrel enjoying a strawberry in Burnaby, British Columbia. We love seeing Your Canada. Keep emailing us those photos to viewers@globalnational.com. Donna will be back with you tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Good night.